have 10:05 I'm opening the meeting of the Town Council's Financial Oversight Committee for May 28th. And the first order of business is to approve the open meetings minutes of May 20th. Has everyone had the opportunity to read the minutes?
Mary,
Yes,
I have.
I would move to approve the minutes of May 20th.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, Jim Broderick,
Aye.
Diane Bishop,
Aye.
Michael Kane,
Yes.
and Christine Saunier, yes. Okay, that's good. Next item on the agenda is to go through the departmental budgets that were, the packets that were provided to us the last time, and we really didn't get a great deal of time to discuss it. I've read through mine, and what I'd like to do is have us go page by page and make any further changes or suggestions that we would want to do. Does anybody have a comment on the first page of sources and uses? The general fund sources, which were a nice surprise. So we ended up with these total sources of $65,467,007. Everybody in agreement with that?
Yes.
I agree that that's the page we're looking on. Wasn't sure, and there's a page beyond with the local receipts. I'm still a little concerned that the local receipts are
Overestimated?
well, yeah, a little bit, yes.
Okay, well, we'll get to that.
Yep. The only other comment I would have on our totals is, again, I think I expressed it last meeting, whether we want to use the governor's budget as of 2/17 or use what we used last year for the purposes of Chapter 70 and other state aid, which would
The
just
Chapter 7 increase wasn't that great an increase this year. I believe it was only around $79,000.
right, 79, and the other state aid is 39.
Yeah.
So that was the only thing I would at least just question in terms of how other people feel about that, whether
Yeah.
his budget would hold or whether it's more conservative to use last year. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. Going forward, our uses, let's see, on the bottom of that page is a lot of projections and a calculation of the levy. So what I'd like to do is go to the next page on the local receipts, if that's particularly that's a concern. The only thing is, when you lower the local receipts, you raise the tax rate, because you have less to put against the amount to be levied. So if we budgeted $2,430,000 estimate for motor vehicle excise, I feel comfortable using that same number, but I don't know. Olga, what are you seeing on collections on motor vehicle excise for this year? Did we come close to that number?
Hold on just a second. I could check real quick.
Mary's muted.
There we go.
Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, folks. I think that would be Dawn. I don't know if Olga's trying to reach her, but Dawn would have a better handle on the receipts to date than Olga.
I could check the ledger and see how much we collected so far
Okay,
through
when
March.
you have it, let us know.
Chris, is it fair to assume that the numbers we're looking at were calculated on May 8th, so that there could be some substantial change now that we're toward the end of the month?
Oh, I believe that, my opinion is that these are numbers that were worked up by Sarah.
Right, but we did alter based on Mike's comment last week about the meals excise. That
Correct.
we did enter that, and but that's the only adjustment.
Correct.
Or that plus the interest figure that you were
Yes,
questioning.
I noticed that. Yeah, thank you, Mary. Yeah.
Those are the only two changes that we made from the prior.
Great.
And of course, we added Diane's bonus money for the new growth the last time, but that was in there.
Yeah, the new growth. The payments in lieu of taxes, do we know why there's an increase? Was there a new agreement that was forged this past year?
Not to my knowledge. The only, we have that 20,000 from Berkshire Health, but that's just a pass through on the new East Long Meadow skilled nursing. You
Right.
get 20 in the door, but it goes out. And this year was the first year that was received. So, but I don't know where that's coming from.
Okay.
So I was just looking at the FY19 number, Chris, and it was 255 for, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, 226 for penalties and interest on taxes. So it looked like maybe we had kind of undershot the estimate for the
Yeah.
budget. And this was perhaps an adjustment to bring it closer to what the FY19 experience was.
Could be,
Yeah.
yes.
And not really knowing exactly what that is. I mean, it doesn't look unreasonable. I have more suspicion about the excise tax than I do that one, I think.
Okay.
The excise tax, so far we collected 2.1 million.
2.1. Okay, so you just have the month of June.
And we posted up through April.
Okay, so there'd be two
Yeah.
more months.
Yeah.
So you may fall short of that 2.4.
We may, but that was one of the taxes that was granted an extension too. So any
Oh, was it?
prior billings are not really due. If people wanted to take advantage, they did have until June 1st to pay.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, since everything didn't really hit the fan until, the end of February, middle of March, how much that's going to reflect, whereas we're going to see, it's hard to know whether people will kind of delay things, delay purchases or whatever, over the coming year, given the economic situation and how quickly or slowly we bounce back.
Yeah.
Be more dramatic in the next fiscal year for budget planning purposes anyway.
So far, we still have 472,000 receivable on the motor vehicle.
How much was that again?
472,000.
So that would bring us to a 2.5 number if it was collected by the end of June.
Yeah.
So maybe the 2.430 would be okay.
Right, because we're down $330,000 right now, so we're actually going to surpass, go by the number of 2430 with
Yeah.
the calculations that she's recommending here,
Yeah.
which is good. So
Right, I wouldn't object to it. I'm just thinking that all that receivable and whatnot is based on before things happen,
Yes.
as opposed to after.
Is there anything else that jumps out at people on this? We talked to Dawn. She felt the investment income was okay. The Medicaid, the projection, and of course the recurring, there are certain things that fall into that recurring category, which I'm sure Sarah took into account.
I think last time when we were looking at this, I wasn't sure what the special assessment was for 30,000, or maybe the answer was there and I forgot to write it down or something.
Yeah, I
That
did too.
was due, the special assessment is due to a fee that the assessors apply to, it's a penalty fee. And it's a pretty standard, we get approximately 30,000 every year.
Yeah.
So is there a reason is there a reason
fine.
showing as if it's new revenue, Diane?
I believe that that is just a blank in the budget for FY20 because I'm assuming that Sarah was aware that we received about the same amount each and every year, and that wasn't going to change.
So we
Unless
think-
all of,
Go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say, unless all of a sudden, all of the taxpayers decided to fulfill their obligation.
Yeah.
So we may not have put it in the budget for last year, but we were receiving it.
Yeah, we have been receiving it since I've been here. That's been a standard.
Okay, all right. As long as it'll happen this year, that's good with me.
Yeah, it's an added to tax fine for people who don't file their income and expenses, the commercial, on the commercial properties for information.
I am looking at the recap sheet from last year, and that number 30,000 was plugged in. So most likely it was just not added on to the first column budgeted.
Yeah.
Because I can see it's on page 3 of the recap.
Okay. Any other questions on the estimated receipts, which of course are strictly under the purview of the accounting officer? So,
The only thing again is the recurring, which shows 100,000, although the FY19 is 216, so maybe there's a good reason to make that adjustment, but it was significantly higher than our budget in 20.
yeah.
And then the non-recurring, again, I think we talked about it. Were we all set for the fact that it went from 30 to 151? We had a reason for that additional monies.
The non-recurring. She's got FEMA in there. So,
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if that's money that we thought it was gonna get here by this year from COVID. I'm sure.
It could have been because, well, again, we're all guessing, but
Mhm.
the initial, the version prior to this May 8th one was March 13th, and we were underway with our COVID problem slightly. So maybe that was just an estimate because we were well aware that we were going to have FEMA claims and NEMA claims, but I don't know that to be a fact. It's just my speculation.
Oh, you mean potential reimbursements?
that may have to be fine-tuned and researched then. Let's put a question by that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we finished with the local receipts? I would go to the page that's general fund sources and uses summary. I'll give you my
In the upper
personal,
corner, Chris, is that,
there's a couple of pages of debt information.
yeah, so it's page 5, I think.
It is.
Yes. I didn't see your number up there. The only questions I have are on the last grouping, capital projects, which we're not sure what the recommendations will be. Hoping it'll be lower than the 1,481,465. And my suggestion would be on the stabilization fund, can we just round that up to $45,000? Instead of such an odd number, 43,287, or go down to 40,000.
Or I was almost going to suggest go down to 0.
Go into stabilization? Yeah, because we've been more generous in past years.
Because we may be looking at that to help us out. I mean, again, it's one of those optional things.
Yeah,
Yeah, we don't have to contribute to it at all this year for my money,
yeah.
because we may be,
Well,
as
what's
Jim
the
says,
general
we may be
feeling?
subtracting from it.
Right.
Yes.
You want 0, 40, or 45?
Where's 0?
Well,
Good with
Mike,
zero.
how do you feel about it?
NJ.
Whether you round up or down, I mean, I'm getting the feeling, Jim, you threw out 0. Were you serious on that? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, at least for consideration, Mike, this is an optional number we put in to be able to each year contribute into the stabilization fund for the rainy day. So we've been talking about, we may look to the stabilization fund perhaps this year to help. Well, rather than taking it out, the same effect would be to not put in this year.
Uh-huh.
And in essence, you would gain $43,000 worth of support. So it's one of those years where, you know, we're expecting pressure on the revenues, and we're clearly got pressure on our insurance expenses. So that's why I threw it out for at least us to talk about.
I like the idea, and I'd like to talk about it further with the group, but I think it's a great safety net, and like to get everyone else's opinion on it.
You think it's a good idea to go down to 0?
I do, and I'll tell you why. In addition to what Jim said, our turnbacks from fiscal 20, which we haven't totaled yet, but they will be significant. And the suggestion from DLS is to turn those back into your stabilization fund this year so that you can access them for revenue shortfalls, as opposed to letting them fall into free cash, because our free cash utilization is going to be limited to what was certified July 1st of last year.
Right.
So if we put it in stabilization, we can access it. And it's going to be a substantial amount. I think we've determined that we've already saved around 61,000 projected in payroll savings. And I don't think Olga's had a chance yet to quantify everything else that we've saved by some cost cutting in the balance of fiscal 20. So I'm good with 0 on the contribution to the stabilization fund. I think it makes sense this year.
Okay, does anybody want to make a motion in that regard?
I'd be happy to make a motion to reduce the stabilization fund from 43,287 to 0 based on the conversation we just had.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion on that? I just want to make a comment. With the information that Mary just provided about putting all the turnbacks into the stabilization, that makes them available if the town needs it. So I will call this for a vote. Mike Kane,
Yes.
Diane Bishop,
Yes.
Jim Broderick,
Aye.
Chris Sonyer, yes. Okay, that's going to be a 0, Olga.
Done.
Thank you.
Done? But she's good. She's good.
Okay,
Down to 2193 now.
Oh, from the 2610, you mean?
From when I put it to 0, the tax rate went down to 2193, and it was 2195 before.
Okay, thank you.
When we have total other uses on that page, can you give us what the bottom line is on that? It starts with 1,481,465. I suppose I could do the math, but
Well, does it make sense now to set a capital spending benchmark? The committee's meeting next week, and I think we're about ready to, we've weighted the projects or graded them. So I think part of our business next week will be to suggest certain projects for payment, but maybe it would be helpful to say what we're going to spend, do it a little,
Well,
I mean, does that make
I-
sense, or would you rather do it as a percentage of the gross, as I understand you generally do?
I can relay to you that I believe I can. Kathy was hoping that the capital project's total amount would come to around 700,000. So it's almost cut in half. I thought that was optimistic, and said so.
Yeah, that's a little lower than I was hoping for, but
Yeah.
we can
And I mean,
certainly-
she's just, this was in casual conversation. So,
Yeah, I mean, the sad part is that you got some
That means-
contractual obligations in there
Absolutely.
that are there, and so you have to like pull those off to look
Yeah.
at the rest of the stuff, yeah.
Right, and I think it depends too, some things are probably going to come out of the enterprise fund, some out of the sewer fund.
That's
Correct.
So
And-
we
and-
don't
And
really,
something's gonna be
yeah.
recommended for bonding. I mean, I could see us maybe using the $1,049,000 as just a tentative target right now, and then let the capital committee go through that and then come back to see what, just have a number to put in, but.
The same amount as last year, you mean?
Well, yeah, just to try something with the understanding that this is a tough year, and I know we say that every year, and that's how we came up with the $1,049,000.
Yeah,
But then we can see how much we can shoehorn in, and that's not enough with, there's enough crossover between the two committees that we can communicate with each other. But if you want to stick a number in,
yeah, because
Might be helpful.
yeah, capital projects, the amount that's in there for 21 is everything that was requested. So, Mike, how do you feel about that?
Well, I spent some time talking to Kathy about it, and being part of the capital committee, I realistically see that number being probably cut in half. I don't think it's unreasonable based on the conversations that we've been having in capital.
Really? Well, then why don't we plug in, how do you feel about, for purposes of our projections, under capital projects for 21, using the fiscal 20 number for now?
Yeah, I was gonna say, make it an even million. That's just a tad lower than what you had last year, but
That's a big savings.
I would do the same, and I just did some calculations here, and 700 might be a little aggressive, so we're kind of splitting it in the middle rather than doing a 50% reduction, if you will. We're in the middle, right around $1 million. So
I like the nice round number.
I do too.
$1,049,000 sounds like we knew what we were doing, and the million. It's
Okay,
clearly a
Diane, any
guesstimate.
comments?
No, I'm agreeing with everything that has been said so far.
Okay, so let's plug $1 million into capital projects for purposes of our projections.
how's that lower the tax rate, Olga?
Yeah, I'll let you know in a minute. $21.69, 85 cents higher from last year.
That's pretty good.
Could I just ask, again, I'm unfamiliar with it, that's why I'm asking, and I'm not suggesting that we cut it necessarily, but the compensated absences fund, is that something that we've calculated you have to do the 75 every year to keep it in a certain state of funding, or it's more my ignorance is why I'm asking that.
I'm gonna have to search on that because I thought it was some kind of law or something like that, that
I believe it is.
it needs to be, every year, but I'm not sure about the amount though. The exact
Right.
Yeah.
Probably has to be funded because they're based on people's contracts and labor agreements. And so
Right, Mary. What I'm not sure of is where we are in our funding status or level, and et cetera. Whether you have any wiggle room at all on that. I wouldn't suggest changing it, but I'd be curious about what its status is.
I'd like to back up for a minute. Do you think I need to take a vote on reducing that capital projects amount to $1 million for our purposes? If so, I would like a motion in that regard.
So I think we should do a motion because we did that with the stabilization fund, and it kind of lines up with that. So I'll make a motion to reduce the capital projects line item under 2021 from $1,481,465 to $1 million even.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, Jim Broderick,
Aye.
Diane Bishop,
Aye.
Michael Kane,
Aye.
Chris Sonner, aye. The motion passed. Okay,
Just as an observation, I don't know if we could find another $45,000, but if we could find another $45,000, I believe, then maybe Olga can back this up. I believe would be even with the 2020 budget at 2,124.
I'm sorry, I lost.
Reduce another 45 in spending.
Well, I was
Mike?
saying if it's possible to find another $45,000, would that put us even with the 2020 total use, total other use?
Oh,
Oh. Okay, let me do it.
well, I think as we go through the other, because general government is in here on this page, all of the, under general fund uses, I think if we go through general funds, we may find some more money rather than aiming for 45,000.
It's just a target to keep in mind going forward, like you're suggesting, so.
Okay, very
I
good.
think on page 8, that grouping is split up and detailed a little bit more. Because one of the questions I had was on that other charges, the big lump that's 957,000
Yeah,
goes up by 54. And I
that might be,
think I asked before, we have in here, in that, I believe it's maybe, I know it's in the 2.6, and so I assume it's probably part of the other charges, the 957, is $272,000 for community preservation fund. And I keep trying to figure out where that is in our revenue, because my understanding is that's supposed to be a wash. And I see a place where we put in some money for debt
community.
interest, but it's not anywhere near 267,000.
Yeah, I think some money comes out of community preservation to pay debt.
106,000 on page 1 is credited as revenue, but why do we have 271,000 that we're paying as an expense is, I guess, what I'm not sure of.
So I don't know if I can offer some help in that, but when we do vote when the town council votes, they're going to vote approximately that amount of money, which is 5% for administrative, 10% for each one of the special designated categories, and 65% of the undesignated categories. That does get put onto the recap, so it looks like we are adding it to our overall budget, but then on page 2 of the recap, we then put that money back in where it washes. So it may look like we're adding it, but it is going to be kind of, I think Dawn or Olga said something about buckets. We're putting it in one bucket and it's gonna get transferred to another bucket.
Well, that sounds good, Diane, for the recap, but how does it translate? Where does it wash for the purposes of the model that we're using to forecast, I guess is where I'm coming from.
We have to raise it, and we anticipate what that percentage on the tax bills is going to be. That would be my answer to that. So it would be included in other charges.
I mean, we have taxes, which I assume is just the regular real estate taxes.
right.
Then we have the 1% community preservation, like kind of surtax that is added, but I don't see where that is in revenue anywhere, or where that 271 gets offset anywhere. So that's I guess that's my I think I had it last year too, and I was trying to get Sarah to show me where it washed, and I'm not sure I ever really saw that.
So
Jim, I'm sorry, Jim, where's the 271 number that you're referring to?
Page 8 of the package. It's the third from the last page in the packet, Mary. It's other financing uses.
Oh, I don't have that on my page 8.
No, I've
don't
got
either.
8A and B.
It says 8G. It's kind
Oh.
of,
Oh,
8G, okay, let me find that.
it's the third page from the last page I have is 10, and then there's 9, and then one
Okay,
that looks like 8G.
Uh-huh.
gotcha.
It's the last page
Oh,
of like the
okay.
detail department budgets and general fund budget.
Right.
So there's
Yes, I
the
see
state
it, thank you.
abatement, the state charges, and
Yes, I see it now.
That's a financing, use, okay.
it foots down to the 2.6 that we've been working on.
Okay, so perhaps, looking at this page, after the 53,000, if you took
It looks like it
from the
could-
Community Preservation Fund through to the end, you might come up with that 957,350.
Right,
So that's what it's made up of, the overlay account, the state charges, and the state offset, which is the library money. So that, they're grouped together here as other charges.
right.
And perhaps that 271,947 comes off of the sheet that they have to do for the recap to report to the state on what was collected on the Community Preservation Fund.
Right, you're right. And so
That's just a guess.
the question is, the way I understand our model is constructed, I don't see it shown in the revenue to offset what was clearly in our expenses, unless it's buried within, the general taxes or something. But that would be my question, because it would be, we know it shouldn't be an impact on us. So I just want to make sure our model is reflecting that correctly.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
I'll look into that.
Yeah, and it sounds like it does it on the recap, Diane, but we don't use that for this purpose. So,
Right.
okay, that was my main question on
You're gonna have us all playing detective now.
that.
All right, are we finished with page 5? And I think page 6 will, with Olga's changes that we have, the only question I had marked on this page, well, I had 2. I had the motor vehicle excise, but I also had the Chapter 70 education aid. And that's the big question, I think, for us.
Well, Chris, as of Tuesday at 1 p.m. of this week, the Commissioner of Education was on our statewide CEO call, and all he said was guidance forthcoming, but they anticipate cuts of just some uncertain amount, and they weren't even suggesting what that amount might be. So I think everybody at the state level is content to wait until the July 15th tax due date that's been extended from April, just to see what the revenues are and how bad the loss is before they even start to construct the budget for 21.
Yeah, yeah,
So
good point.
everybody talks about it, but no one's able to, pin down a reasonable projection. And I think everyone's sort of afraid to try.
Yes. Well, that's it. I mean, education has always been highly regarded in the budget process, and the state has been, very aggressive about funding education. But I am very hesitant to propose any kind of number, as you say. The experts know more than we do, and I think we just have to leave it as it is for the time being and work our way through.
We may get lucky because some of the CARES funding has special provisions for school purposes.
Yeah.
And I guess what some of the calculation is that's ongoing is to try to figure out if by virtue of movement of some of this or drawdown of some of this CARES funding that's peculiar to school issues, that maybe the Chapter 70 funding per se wouldn't have to be reduced dramatically because they can make it up from the federal funding. But again, that's all just conceptual conversation at this point.
Yeah, I do have a question in that regard, Mary. I remember Superintendent Smith saying that they thought they anticipated around a $260,000 from the CARES Act. Would that be part of that $1,436,000 that you announced the other evening that would be allocated for East Long Meadow to do a drawdown?
No, I think that's a separate CARES Act
Is it?
provision that preceded this most recent one that results in us getting the 1.436.
Okay.
I think it's additional funding. If you
For the
remember, there had been like 3 or 4 stimulus packages and they all have CARES in the nomenclature. This
Yeah.
one that I think Mr. Smith was referring to, it precedes the one that I'm talking about, that I talked about at our council meeting.
Okay. Would that be, would that come in, do you think, for fiscal 20, for the current fiscal year?
Which one now?
The 260,000, would the school receive that in this fiscal year? Or would it be?
I think so, because it's a couple months old anyway, you know, the legislation. So I would have to check with Pam on that, or Gordon, but
Yeah.
like what they're doing with our 1.4 is we're applying by June 5th, but you can use it for fiscal 20 or 21.
Oh,
So
you
they're
can.
kind of rolling through the 2 fiscal years. I don't know whether the instruction on that other package are similar, but we
Okay,
can check with Pam to verify.
yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you.
So Chris, on that, and again, it's only my own opinion, but it would just seem to me that we might want to look at perhaps using the 2020 numbers as opposed to the governor's budget. It's not a big change one way or the other, but it seems like it's a little bit more conservative than anticipating, to be necessarily an increase. Listening to Mary in terms of what they're suggesting, but I'm fine with whichever way people want to go with it.
I'd like to get people's opinion on that. Diane, what do you think of going back to the fiscal 20 number for the Chapter 70 money? This is on page 6.
Yep.
Going back to the 12,102,021, be a reduction of 79,517.
So I would always recommend using a number that was factual from the prior year as opposed to a proposed number, knowing that the governor and then several different entities or departments will then vote, and they are always up and down. So the factual number that we know as of today is last year's FY20 number. So I would go with that also.
Mike?
I'm in agreement.
Okay. I think it's a safe thing to do. It's not a big leap. It's $79,000. So I'll entertain a motion to use that number in our calculations.
I'd move to use the number that was used for FY 2020 Chapter 70 education aid of 12,102,021 for our projection for FY 21.
I have a second.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, I'll bring it to a vote. Mike Kane,
Yes.
Diane Bishop,
Yes.
Jim Broderick,
Aye.
Christine Sonier, yes. Okay, that makes an adjustment of $79,517. It's going to change the numbers again, Olga.
Yeah.
Thank God for computers. sometimes.
Okay, are we finished with this page? If we don't have any further questions on this?
No, I just had the same question for the group about the other state aid, but again, it's really a matter of preference for people.
I think other state aid is from the cherry sheet. That would include things like for the library, some of the small things on the cherry sheet.
So hopefully they won't get
And-
impacted.
Yeah. And the number that we reduced the projected, the unrestricted is the one that was the 14%
Right.
reduction.
So, I mean, I can live with it kind of leaving it. Is a smaller number.
Yeah.
Chris, Olga, can you just clarify? I know, Chris, you suggested that 14%, and then when we made the change, it resulted in an 11.59% reduction.
That's because it's going back to the previous year, not
Okay,
to the
that's
number
right.
that was in the governor's budget.
Right, sorry about that. You did
That's
explain that
okay.
last week.
I kind of did a double take on that number too.
Yeah, I had to kind of refresh myself.
Okay.
thank you.
Page 7 is the revolving funds, which I think are fine. I would call to your attention on the health department, there is no number in there. The revolving fund had been authorized at $825 last year. They generally collect about $200. In her budget, the health director said that she feels that this revolving fund should be dissolved by the town council. They need to vote on that because with the program that they have for the Sharps, that the $200 that they collect, she feels can go into the general fund. She doesn't see a use for that. So that's something we don't have to concern ourselves with. That's a town council issue. What does concern me on this page is the estimated expenses and estimated revenues in the revolving fund for the recreation department. They have estimated their expenses higher than their revenues. Not by much, close to $6,000, but that has to be addressed.
Chris, this isn't the amount of money in the revolving account, or at least it doesn't kind of read that way. It just reads, it seems to read what the projected revenues are and what the estimated expenses are. So, I mean, if there's a balance already in the recreation account, I guess what I'm not sure of what balance is in the recreation account that might absorb this difference, or
that I don't know. All I can tell you is last year, I went back to last year's and the estimated revenues were $605,545. The estimated expenses were $551,208. So they certainly had like a $50,000 cushion. I have no idea what the balance is in that revolving account at this point in time. I don't know if that's.
I'm
Well,
trying
I
to
can get that.
having issues with my computer, so I can't bring it up. What's going on?
I'm meeting with Donna on Monday, and I can address this, but the expenses for 21 will be significant, well, as the revenues will be reduced as well, but there's a real issue about whether there will be any camps this summer.
Yeah.
And she's already in the process of refunding thousands of dollars to people who previously signed up for various activities. So that's a real fluctuating balance, but I'll discuss it with Donna on Monday.
Yeah, and this doesn't impact the tax rate, so because it's the fees coming in and how they're spent.
So Chris, I was just looking at on page 7B, which gives the detail to what you were just looking at.
Yes.
And in looking at the detail, if you look at rental and pool membership, That's where it looks like they're going to have their issues for revenues based on expenses, because I'm assuming that they're not going to be renting the place out as much due to COVID-19 and the pool memberships. And right
Right.
there is $9,000, and that basically is taking care of that wash. So I think with the pool and knowing where the rec department, and knowing where we're standing with the governor's orders and phase 1 just opening, I think they're trying to be as close to as they can. And they probably, as Mary said, might even be having more issues because they're having to do refunds. So I think Mary's going to be having the conversation, but I mean, I can already see, just looking at this document, where they're already going to be taking some hits due to closures.
Yeah. I'm wondering if the expenses will definitely go down if they don't have the pool, you know, the
Right.
maintenance on the pool. They have to do some, but not as much as if it got the daily use it does in the summertime.
Right.
And if you have if it's opening, slowly opening, and you have a third of the members, but you still need to staff it, you're going to still have expenses to pay and still be taking in limited amount of revenue.
Nearly
Just-
every one of their issues here on the detail page, Diane, as you point out, nearly every one of them is impacted or about to
Yeah.
be. So,
Okay. Okay. We'll wait to hear from you, Mary. All right. On to page 8A. I had a couple of comments on this page that I did some calculation on. One of the things, before I'll preface that with a remark that some department heads have foregone the money for hotels and conferences and food, meals that take them out of the office. Considering the current environment, some of these are going to be virtual meetings where they don't need the hotel money, they don't need the meals money. Case in point, I know that the Massachusetts Assessors is doing a virtual summer conference. I don't know what they'll do about the school in August. That's yet to be seen, but definitely those conferences have been changed to virtual meetings. So number 1 on my list here, going to 135, the town accountant. There was approximately $13,000 in stipends that had been added to an individual contract within that department. I would suggest that that amount be reduced by $10,228.48 and bring the salary item for the department head up to $105,000 for the coming fiscal year. That would be just an increase of $2,771.52. I don't know if that's anything Mary would agree to, but I think a lot of people were taken aback last year when they found out about the stipends that were being given in a separate contract between the town manager and the finance director.
yeah, the only issue I have with that, Chris, is I'd like a little wiggle room on that number. Because my vision for that position is not just the town accountant, but the director of municipal finance,
Yeah,
which also serves as the town accountant in recent history. The stipends, one was for procurement officer, which I think can go away.
correct.
And the other one was for additional service as town accountant, because the position was being compensated as director of municipal finance.
Correct.
And from what I've gathered from the resumes that I've seen so far, the qualifications that I'm looking for Director of Municipal Finance, which I think is a vital position. I might be able to get somebody for 105, but I'd like the leeway to go to maybe to 110 without stipends. I mean, I wouldn't call it a stipend. It would just be a straight salary, but
Yes.
um,
Oh, that would be
those are my
fine.
thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I would certainly, take your lead on that because you know what the market is requiring at this point in time. So if we change that salary to 110, let's see.
I mean, I'll try to get somebody for 105, but I'd like the ability to negotiate a bit.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I understand that. I think everybody else would understand that. Am I correct, Mike?
Absolutely. Until that position is filled, we're not going to have a solid number. And we all know that that's in transition at this point. So I would agree with the concept.
Yeah,
No objection here.
yeah. I am.
I'm fine.
Okay. I'll leave that to Olga to figure out then. I had done the math. I can't do it in my head anymore. I have to go back to the computer and the calculator.
The less we do in our head, the less we are able to do in our
Oh,
head.
it's terrible.
Chris, did you say that was under Department 113?
No, it's under Department 135 under the salary line item.
Okay, now I have it. I can mark it here.
So we're going to change the salary that showed up for fiscal 20 was 102,228.48, but also received 13,000 in stipends. So we're going to change the salary to 110,000 for fiscal 21 to give Mary some negotiating leeway. And it will be a reduction probably.
It'll be
maybe
reduced.
$2,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least it's moved south. The numbers moved
Yes.
south.
Be a small reduction.
5,228.
Yes. Okay, that's done.
So moved.
Oh, yes. All those in favor, Jim Broderick,
Aye.
Diane,
Aye.
Mike Kane,
Yes.
Chris Sonner, yes. Okay.
Just need a second, right?
Well, I did. Oh, yeah, you said so moved. Okay, Mike, did you second that? And we didn't hear you.
I am seconding that motion. Thank you.
Do we need to vote again? Mike Kane?
No, we just didn't hear him the first time. That's all.
Okay. All right. The next thing on that item, on that page that I was studying, if anybody else has things, please step forward. Item number 145. There were, within the itemized budget that was originally filed, because the general change in that department, the reduction was only amounted to $29.11 from the original request. There's $890 for tolls and parking, $120 for meals, and $650 for a hotel. I am suggesting that we leave $200 for tolls and parking and eliminate the $120 for the meals and the $650 for the hotels. So that means a reduction of $1,460. That's my proposal. Again, I assume it's for conferences.
Mary, do you have any issue with that?
No, but I thought that, thought we had made those reductions already. There have been so many submissions. Olga, do you have any, do you have those data sheets in front of you?
Yeah.
By chance? Treasurer, collector? I know Dawn did revise her budget more than once, so,
Yeah, total salary, non-salary, it
yes.
went from 85,000 to 80,000.
non-salary went from 85 to 80. Are those specific items that Chris was just mentioning still in there? The hotels and parking?
That I
and-
don't know. Tolls and parking is how much?
Tolls and parking right now is $890.
Yeah,
Okay, all right, so they're not out, so they should go
Right.
up. Right, okay.
Okay. So you want that one to go down to what?
200.
200?
And the meals and the hotel would be eliminated, the 120 and the 650.
That was eliminated already, yeah.
That was taken out already?
Mhm.
Okay. We could probably check with Dawn and see, but I don't know how much traveling she has to do. Tolls and parking, I'm not sure. So if $200 doesn't, I'll check with her. If $200 doesn't cover it, we may have to.
Okay, so that's
Okay.
good for now.
In the ensuing budgets, 152, 151 looked fine, 152 looked fine. Information technology made some really big adjustments. It looked fine.
Excuse me, Chris,
Yes,
did we have to do any vote on the reducing tolls and parking since you have done that on others?
I stand corrected, yes. Okay. Would you make the motion to reduce that amount, Diane?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion to reduce line item 145 collector treasurer tolls and parking to be reduced to $200 for fiscal 2021 proposed budget.
Is there a
Second
second?
the motion.
All those any further discussion on that? All those in favor, Mike Kane,
Yes.
Diane Bishop,
Yes,
Jim Broderick,
Aye.
Chris Sonner, yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to page 8B. Town's council clerk seemed in line. Elections, I think we previously agreed we couldn't change that because of the number of elections this year. Planning, zoning, and conservation were adjusted by the town manager, and they're fine. The PVPC assessment, that's standard. Now, 210, there's no change evidenced in this budget at all, in this sheet.
Well, there will be, Chris. With the dissolution of the dispatch office, the police department is going to have to add a civilian to be affectionately known as the greeter. And that's not budgeted in this original submission. So I'm working with Jeff. I'm meeting with him this afternoon to make some revisions there.
Okay,
So,
I'm assuming the new captain position was taken out?
yes. Well, Olga, was that change made? Because I know it was submitted with that removed, but
Well, the last sheet I have is the one that was signed December 31st here. And when I talked to Penny, I asked her if there was any change, and she said, no, that is the number. So I'm not sure if it includes that or
so
not.
perhaps it's not been removed, but I'll clarify that because
Yeah.
we know it's not going to be funded for this year.
Okay, so that they may be subject to some new numbers.
Yes, definitely on the PD.
Okay, very good, thank you. Okay, moving on. Let's
Chris,
see.
I
Yes,
have one question back to elections. And
yes.
I'm not sure, just for point of information, do the election numbers correspond with the reduced hours? With our upcoming election, even this June 2nd, we've reduced the hours from 13 to 5. So there would be a decrease. And I'm just wondering if these numbers.
That would be in this fiscal year.
And,
That
okay,
would be in.
how about the other? I'm wondering if we're following, Mary, maybe you can chime in on this. Are we going to probably follow the same protocol for the next elections with reduced hours? Has there been any discussion about that?
That's not been a topic that's come up a lot, other than in the context of the use of absentee ballots. So there hasn't been a lot of discussion about the physical voting hours that I'm aware of. But
Okay,
I would suspect that the answer would be yes, that going into the fall and even November, we will be in this same protocol, Mike.
okay. So just a point that these numbers could move south too, because we
Could be a
will have,
little, I'll check with Jeannie.
I believe, 2 elections in 2021.
Right.
There'll be, well, is there a state election this year? There's a state
We
election,
have September and the November election.
and then we'll have one next June also, so that makes 3.
So
Because
that
we'll have
falls into
election.
21, right?
Yeah, so there'll be 3 elections next year. Okay, so that
I'll
has,
double check with Jeannie on that, but I think some of the expenses are stable even with the reduced hours because of
I think.
the length of time that the registers are there.
yeah. Yeah,
Jeannie's
because,
sending
you
me a
know-
text that postage will go up.
Oh,
With the
no.
number of absentee ballots. She's getting requests for a considerable number of absentee ballots.
Uh-huh.
Well, you can't get away from these people. No offense, Jeannie.
Okay, fire department, I think the fire chief's done a phenomenal job in readjusting his budget and transferring some of the costs to the ambulance and so forth. He had a substantial reduction. I think it's kudos to him. Building department also made some substantial changes. In dispatch, that's a big savings. The 125,000 that's in there is a big savings compared to last year's budget.
Well, and it also may not, I mean, it's in there for budget purposes because we'll have to pay that to Westcom to join them, but that's to be reimbursed to the town through the grant application that Westcom is doing. So it had to be listed because we'll have to spend it. And some of that will go over to the police department for that greeter position that I was just referring to. So
Very
it's-
good.
So-
Very good.
So Mary, on that point, are we confident enough in terms of a portion, some of reflecting some portion of that reimbursement in our model?
Well, the funding comes from the grants, which are funded by a tax, an excise tax on cellular phones. So I don't think there's any jeopardy about the funding source. Query whether, I mean, we put it in there just on the outside chance that the sky falls between now and sometime.
No, well, it's an expense, so it should be in there, but
Yeah,
if there's a pretty reliable source of at least a portion of that being reimbursed for the purposes of our projections,
right. Well, I project that all of it will come back to us because that's going to, the grant for the first 3 years, the grant was intended to pay all the town costs for the first 3 years. So we could plug in 125 as revenue.
Don't like to do that with grant money. Okay.
Could be non-reoccurring. It could be non-reoccurring
Right.
money because, you know, if it's a short period of time that we will be getting some revenues back, you know, this small period, you would want to put it under non-reoccurring, if anything.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it says a short-term grant. Okay, are we good with that? Moving on.
yeah, let's just kind of keep it in our back pocket then, at least for you know, depending on how the numbers look.
Yeah.
Because we do have a source to repay us on that, so it's not a straight necessarily out-of-pocket cost of town.
Public, okay, health department. Was there any change in the non-salary line items at all?
None.
None.
She didn't have a change.
Okay. Any questions on health? With what they're dealing with at this point in time,
Yeah,
you know?
right.
All right, on to 421, Administration and Highway. Did some substantial reductions. I think that's excellent. The building facility, on to the next page, 8D, 422. Again, a reduction of 11,600 plus an overall reduction of 828.11. Snow and ice, there was no change. Utilities, a decrease of 26,200. Trash collection, that reflects the new contract, Mary.
Yes,
And waste collection, I believe, are all in line.
yeah, it's the same issue.
Yeah. I want to forego the discussion on education for today. I think we will take it up next week. We do have meetings posted for June 3rd, June 10th, June 17th, and June 24th. Every Wednesday through June, 10 a.m. with Ryan's assistance, of course.
Be there or be square, huh?
Yes. It has been recommended by the town manager that also that item number 399 remain at the fiscal 20 level. Doesn't seem like a good year to offer increases.
If I may say, Christine, the fiscal 20 level, I thought it was higher than that.
399?
Yeah, let me
No.
see if I can check. I'll check.
It shouldn't be.
Hold on. Just a little.
I think the 8,500 was slightly larger than the
Oh,
year
yeah, it
before.
was, yeah, it came off from last year. That's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there was an increase last year.
Yeah.
So we're in agreement with that adjustment. Okay, moving on to page 8E. Item number 610. Total reduction was substantial, which I think 71,288 and 81 cents.
Yeah, Layla did a great job really paring things there. She made a
I'll say.
significant cut in a small budget to begin with.
Yes, did excellent. Recreation all seems within line.
Well, they had a resignation in March, so they're not refilling that position. So they will be shorthanded, but they're willing to slog through for the foreseeable future without that position staffed. So they're making a significant sacrifice as well.
Excellent, excellent. It's wonderful the cooperation you received, Mary.
The people are great, Chris. They really have stepped up.
Yeah. And celebration 693, we're going to leave that same amount in there. It's been reduced by 200, but hopefully we will have celebrations that we can all be together in 2021 come Memorial Day and Veterans Day and 4th of July.
Since it's 4th of July, does this pay for this year's 4th of July, or is this the budget for next year's 4th of July?
I think this year's pays for the coming 4th of July in the new fiscal year.
So it assumes we pay
I
ahead.
think it's always the year before that we appropriate the money, but Ryan can correct me on that.
There
You're
it
right.
is.
It's, so this year, we obviously will not be spending the 17.5 for the parade since it's canceled. So the money you're talking about will be for the FY21 parade, or the 2021 calendar year parade.
Yeah,
So it's this year's budget that we aren't spending.
Correct. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
It'll be a $17,500 left over.
It'll be
So
that
that'll be-
turn back to the stabilization fund,
Right,
right?
exactly.
yes. It's growing as we speak. Okay, Council on Aging, there was no change. I think she keeps a pretty tight budget. And Veterans Services, the one question I had on, I think the non-salary 118,117, I think that is reimbursed by a percentage from
Yeah.
the state.
Yes, I think, I'm not sure what the percentage is, but I want to say 75 or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
All right.
Is that about right?
yeah, so we appropriate it. Okay, so that takes care of page 8E unless somebody else has a question. Oh, the only other thing I wanted to, I'm sorry, go back to item 541. Also in there was a hotel for 600 and food and travel for 300. I don't know if there was no change offered on that budget, so I'm wondering if those items are still in there.
Which budget is that? I'm sorry.
It's item 541.
The travel on the COA, non-salary, Olga.
Hold on. Travel. She didn't make a change. Last change she did was March 4th, so it must be whatever is in there.
Okay, then that's not been reduced, and it should be.
Okay. So that would be $900 from that budget
In the non-salary.
in the non-salary.
$900 from the travel mileage, toll, and parking.
Yeah, the food and travel was 300 and the hotel was 600.
Yep. Also those two. Okay.
Those two.
I don't know if some of that travel is the local back and forth, we reimburse people whatever the federal mileage rate is.
Yeah, is
Maybe
there
it should-
anything in that budget, Olga, that's just mileage?
Mileage. Yeah, Joe's mileage is in total is $1,900, $1,950.
Ooh,
It's a lot.
And she got separate for the meals and the 300 and then the 600 for the hotel.
Yeah. So we
So
can
that's
leave
a-
the mileage in there, Mary, at that amount, or?
seems high to me, frankly, but must be based on her prior usage. I know there's quite a bit of back and forth on the COA to various, maybe to Springfield and back a few times. I don't know. I'd be willing to knock it down to 1,500
Agreed.
from the 19 for.
Mary, I don't know, and it's something I would say to maybe talk to Carolyn. Could that mileage money also be used to pay for anything to do with the
Meals.
people who deliver food and things like that?
No, because I used to do that and I didn't get my mileage. I got
Oh,
stipend.
okay.
Covered everything.
I
But
believe
I should talk to her anyway. I don't like to slash and burn without
No.
a conversation first.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, but I believe the meal wheel comes out of the revolving account, I believe.
Okay. I just don't want for us to make a decision without fully knowing what it's really being used
No, I'll
for.
talk to Carolyn. Good point, Diane. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So should we stay with the $900 reduction for today? That would be the hotel and food, travel.
Yes.
Sure.
So would that take the non-salary line item down $900?
Yes,
Okay, so would you like me to make a motion in regards to that?
I certainly would.
So I'll make a motion to reduce the non-salary line from Department 541 Council of Aging from 29,159.50 to 28,259.50.
You use the fiscal 20 number, Mike. You want to use the fiscal 21 number? The non-salary line item is 29,779.50.
Okay, so I'll make a correction. So on the non-salary line under 2021, I make a motion to reduce the amount from 29,779.50 to 29,770. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have it,
879.50.
correct. I will second.
Any further discussion? All those-
Diane, do you need those numbers again, or are you okay?
I was going to write in the minutes that we were going to reduce it by $900.
Okay, that's fine with me.
That's simple.
So no.
So has that motion been seconded?
Yes.
Okay, do we need to vote?
Yes, we do. If there's no further discussion, Jim Broderick,
I,
Mike Kane,
Yes.
Diane Bishop,
Yes.
Christine Sonia, yes. Okay. All right, I think that wraps up page 8E. 8F is what it is. It's out of our control. That's Olga's bailiwick now.
so I just wanted to make a comment. It's kind of stunning, really, that when you look on page 5 of our summary general funds, and you look at the general fund budget goes up by $2,026,000, and $1.5 million of that is insurance. So 3/4 of the increase in our entire general fund budget is from this insurance stuff that we have minimal control over and kind of being held hostage to. It's kind of depressing, really, because we're fighting so hard to control everybody's budgets, and then we're getting banged with this kind of an increase. I don't know if there's anything else that can be done to look at those items or whatever. I know in many instances we were in groups or things and for the specific purpose of trying to control them, but boy, it's
Reviewing it
kind of
all,
a kick
Jim.
in the pants.
I know,
Reviewing it
like,
all, I have established a little subcommittee
Yeah.
to advise me with regard, it's too late to do anything, I think, that is of any real substantive value for the policy period that begins July 1st. However, I do have an associate who reached out to me who is in the insurance industry and is a competitor with Maya. So I've asked several department heads to work with Elaine to evaluate whether or not there's any savings that can be accomplished in any and all of these categories. And then Corinne Trangisi and Elaine are working with the Scantic Valley, and we're trying to determine if there's high deductible policies that are available that would be an option that would significantly reduce our costs. But again, the timing prevents us from really doing anything helpful for fiscal 21, but going forward, it's
No, and
well taken. The expense is really enormous.
I agree, Mary, and I'm glad to hear that you're going to be kind of spending some time on it, because for the amount, it seems like some attention is well worth it. So thank you.
It's one of those issues. It's easy to just keep going with what you have, like most insurances, where you just get the premium notice and you pay. And as long as you're getting decent customer service, you don't really analyze it until you see the marked increase that it presents to us. So we'll hopefully make some progress on that in the next few months.
Chris,
yes.
just a question on the on the workman's comp side of it, obviously, it seems to be the biggest increase. And seeing that workman's comp, I believe there's a direct correlation with that amount and total payroll for the town. So if the payroll comes down, hopefully the workman's comp, we could get some kind of savings off that based on payroll being reduced. I
Yeah,
would hope.
It's that, Mike, and also the 3-year experience rate from the prior 3 years of history. And I guess there were quite a few claims in the last 3 years that we're paying for, but those will abate too with the passage of each year. So,
But
and
Mike's point is, well, Kagan, even like for payroll taxes, just to be sure that we recalculate this
Mhm.
based on the new total salaries, in case it goes down a little bit.
yes.
I would say that, I would guess there'd be a savings, and we don't have the payroll. I don't have the payroll numbers in front of me, but if it comes down, I guess this is a question I'd ask the group. We might not recognize that savings till 2022 until the year 21 goes by so that those numbers can be readjusted.
okay, good. We're looking for any silver lining to the clouds. Thank you. I think we've covered just about anything. I just, I wanted to note, I was concerned about the water and sewer rates. I'm sure our superintendent of public works is as well. I noticed that the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission has received a lot of pushback from both the mayor and the council. And the last indication I had was that they were going back to the drawing board. So let's hope we don't get that 17% increase on our water and sewer rates. In speaking with the president of the council, she recalls that 2 or 3 years ago, right at the beginning of the council's deliberations, they did use some money from the enterprise fund to reduce some rates. So that's to be determined in the future when we have more information. For today, we've covered everything except, has anybody got new business?
I would just add that Chris, in the capital planning committee, one of the projects that's under consideration deals with water and sewer, not with the rates per se, but with the metering and the measurement of what we actually receive and discharge. So, hopefully if that project goes forward or moves forward, at least in some respects, perhaps we can get better control and make sure that we're paying the accurate amount.
Very good.
Not suggesting we're not, but we don't have the best measure in place for control of that.
Doesn't hurt to check. Thank you, Mary. With that said, I think we finished our work for today. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, all those in favor, Jim Broderick,
Yes.
Michael Kane,
Yes.
Diane Bishop,
Yes.
Christine Saunier, yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we really accomplished something today.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.